Our guest speaker today is Jeff Cutler. Jeff is an accomplished landscape architect, urban designer, and the founding principal of Space to Place, a Vancouver-based practice dedicated to the creation of transformative public spaces. With nearly 3 decades of leadership in advancing landscape architecture, Jeff brings a multidisciplinary approach that weaves together ecology, ethnography, engineering, and community engagement. Jeff continually challenges conventional methods, integrating emerging technologies to develop sensitive, resilient, and forward-looking design solutions. His current work explores how artificial intelligence can amplify creativity, deepen research, and transform landscape practice, while ensuring that core human values remain central to the design of thriving public realms. Jeff is also the co-chair of the CSLA's Climate and Biodiversity Committee. And through this work, I started following Jeff on LinkedIn a number of years ago. And what has always stood out to me about his post is his generosity as a teacher. He's not just showing you what he's done, but posts his insights with openness and inviting others to learn alongside him. I encourage you to follow his work online as well. Please join me in welcoming Jeff to our session today.
Thank you, Hope. Yeah, and I'm joining from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples in what we now know as Vancouver. And yeah, so I just want to talk to you about our relationship with a new set of tools that's potentially poised to reshape the profession. I'm not going to necessarily get into like tutorials or anything today. It's really more talking about AI and what its impact might be on our profession, and how we can lead through this change with intention and focus on what makes our work truly valuable. Okay.
Great.
So
go ahead and share your screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot the and okay, so I'm just going to.
That looks good.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. So here's a roadmap for our conversation. I'm just going to start with a brief introduction to my background, so you know where I'm coming from. Then we'll look at the incredible pace of AI advancement. And then we'll spend some time with a few tough questions, things that keep me up at night about this technology. But we'll balance that by looking at some of the upside that fuels my enthusiasm for these tools as well. And then finally, we'll speculate a bit about the future, discuss a strategic framework for adopting AI, and talk about the most important piece of the puzzle, the human element. And my goal is to leave you with a clear and balanced perspective. And I just also want to note that the majority of the graphics in this presentation are generated with AI, so you can start to see some of the capabilities, especially on the image generation side, through some of the backgrounds that I've included in this presentation. So my perspective comes from almost 3 decades of practice and 2 decades of leading a studio, Space to Place, in Vancouver. Our work's focused on public space and nature-based design. But our work, I think one common thread of our practice as it's evolved over time is that we've always kind of leaned into emerging and untraditional aspects of the profession, and helping to bring some clarity to that. So example, like we were one of the first firms to start doing skate parks in Canada. That led to a lot of our work that we did in playgrounds and play environments, and helping to bring a new perspective to that. We're able to leverage that experience into doing larger park spaces, and then also infrastructure projects, which has now led to a lot of our current work, which is climate adaptation projects, and helping to bring some definition and clarity to that space. And so this moment feels like another big shift with AI. And so, perhaps, I guess maybe feel a little more comfortable with some of the uncertainty that can be involved with these shifts than what's maybe attracted me to AI as well. So I graduated in 1994, which was a real transition period in workflows, really transitioning from the analog way of working into the digital way of working. So I, saw the emergence of the internet, CAD, Photoshop, and that, um, but I also have that experience with the more traditional hand-drawn approach as well. Uh, but I think that this moment in time reminds me of a meeting that we had in my first job when I moved out to Vancouver. Um, we had an office meeting and we're all sitting around the office table debating whether or not the office should get a internet account, one internet account in one station. And the principal concern they got that people just sitting on the computer all day, surfing internet and wasting time. And then someone else in the meeting brought up that, well, I remember about 10 years ago, we had a similar conversation about whether or not we should bigger thing than the fax machine. And, I feel like that's kind of where we're at in AI right now, but it's happening faster. And landscape architects have always been slow to adopt new technologies. We're a small profession, and our work usually requires fairly complex computing. So it just hasn't been a lot of value in it. A lot of software vendors to really write software for landscape architects, and there is some that happens, but it tends to be slow in its option and its. However, we're at a time now where uh, AI is available to all professions and all disciplines all at once. And, it feels like a kind of different moment than in the past. And it's something that I think as landscape architects, we should at least be evaluating and understanding that this so it doesn't really catch by surprise. And I think it's also valuable to look at the past, at how past technologies have rolled out and been adopted in society. And so looking at, starting with electric power in the 1900s, it took almost 4 decades for that to really become mainstreamed in society and become common throughout. Other technologies you can see like the automobile and even things like a home dryer uh, followed a similar trajectory, but really since the 1980s and the age of the computers is we're finding that these adoption cycles are increasing and happening more rapidly and having more influence and having a really big influence on society. So we can see that with like personal computers, cellular phones, the internet itself, social media, and we can see generative AI at the bottom there, really just starting its arc of adoption. And so my entry in AI started in the summer of 2022 with the public release of Midjourney. I had heard about AI before then, and it always seems quite abstract and a ways in the distance. And this was really the first opportunity that I had to kind of experience a tangible result from it. And my initial reaction when I first did it, was like, is kind of magical, right? You put in a description of what you want to see, and then it generates this image and change everything. And um, while the early results now seem somewhat crude, the progress is pretty astounding. And since that time, we've also seen the rollout of ChatGPT and video models and other AI platforms that's advancing at quite a rapid rate. So I just want to show you, just to give you an example of what this rate of progress looks like. So starting in July 2022, when the first public release of Midjourney, this is an example of some of the output that you would get from that. The prompt is in the top left-hand corner, and just a description of what I wanted to see in the output. You can see that it's kind of interesting, but it doesn't really follow the prompt that well. It's not very coherent. But then as we start to go, and I think early at this stage of AI is best more for abstract graphics. And then in November of 2022, the version 4 came out. And so this is an example of a generation from that version 4 using the exact same prompt. We have a little bit more coherence now, but still there's a lot of imperfections and a lot of things that the AI is having trouble reconciling in this image. Then we go to May 2023. We have with the release of version 5, and there were a number of point releases in between the major version releases that were small advancements. But I'm just going to stick to the main versions for this example. But you can see we're a much improved generation from this one. Then going to December 2023 version 6, and you can see once again kind of a leap in improvement and coherence to where we're at with the current model, which is version 7, which was released in March of this year. Much improved, and there's still a few imperfections here, but I would imagine with one more release that we could get pretty much a perfect something that's almost indistinguishable from a real photograph. And so since then, another interesting thing that's been released is they've released their video model. So you can have a frame that a starting frame and an ending frame, and it will create the video in between those two frames. So what I did was I created a video using each of these frames that I just showed you, and had Midjourney create a video that connects that generates an animation in between each one of these scenes. So. And then also the last scene, I've transitioned to another style. So you can also, from an image, you can create styles based on that framework. And so there's a number of different things you can do, but that just gives you an example of the pace of change that we've been seeing. Also, there's this overwhelming pace of AI. It seems like new tools and models are emerging every week, and it can be quite daunting to keep up with the nuances of different tools and which tools to use for what. Even if you're using a tool for writing, for instance, different tools have different voices and different kind of personalities in a way. And so there's a lot to take in for sure. Also, here's a collection of current tools that could be applicable to landscape architects, with a collection of large language models, which are typically chatbots, video generators, 3D model generation. This is still pretty early in its development, but it's probably where Midjourney was a couple years ago. There's also image generators and a whole suite of those, and they're starting to be integrated into programs like Photoshop as well. Aggregators are platforms that plug in a whole bunch of these different models into one platform, so you can be using different models together with each other. And also there's some new platforms that are emerging for site planning and urban design to explore early stage massing and test fits. So now I'd just like to transition and talk a little bit about some of the things that keep me up at night about AI. Like, a lot of people do think about AI in fairly binary terms. And I do think it's a bit more nuanced than that. But there are some things that definitely are top of my mind about AI. And I think the first thing is, like, what is the impact of AI's energy footprint? The AI models are run on data centers, and these data centers are increasing in capacity, and new ones are being built that require large amounts of energy. At the same time, as the adoption is increasing and the capabilities are increasing, which does require higher and higher amounts of energy, the models are becoming more and more efficient over time too. I don't think that efficiency is enough right now to balance off the rate of growth, but there are improvements in the energy consumptions that it does that they do require. Also, I did calculate my energy footprint over the last 3 years since I've been using AI myself, and just to try to get an understanding of what does that look like. And when I added up my footprint, it would have been less than if I had done one like cross-country flight. So that puts it into context a little bit. While it's not an insignificant use on a personal individual level, I think where the energy really adds up is when you're aggregating it across a large population with that expanding growth. Also, how will young practitioners learn the craft of landscape architecture in the age of AI? It's going to have a transformative impact on workflows, I believe, and we need to start to be adapting our educational processes to try to figure out what are those skills that really we need to be giving students moving forward. There's a lot of vulnerability to some entry-level tasks to AI automation. And I would encourage young professionals to learn the tools. Most firms find it easier to hire new staff that are trained on that, are comfortable and trained on tools than to actually train their own staff on tools. So that might be a way into practices for some people. But I also think there's a really important aspect of mentorship that we really need to be paying attention to as a profession, and transferring those key skills and knowledge onto future generations. I think one other threat that we need to consider is, will other professions look to expand their work into the territory of landscape architecture? AI is good at following frameworks and making standardized aspects of professions vulnerable. So there is a possibility that engineers, architects, and planners, as they start to feel threatened in their own work, could look to expand into our work as well. I think on the flip side, that also does provide potential opportunities for landscape architects to expand into other definitions, but we really need to identify and protect the core skills that make up landscape architecture and represent the profession. I do think some of the higher kind of level aspects of the profession, like a lot of the complexity and are more protected. I think it's some of those more standardized aspects that are a bit more vulnerable. But I think like those that also does make professions like civil engineering somewhat vulnerable as well, because their work is very much based on standards, which is somewhat easy for AI to follow. And then looking at AI's upside, some of the things that fuel my enthusiasm and get me excited about AI's potential. AI, I think, has the opportunity to boost landscape architects and boost their capabilities. And I don't really see it as an immediate threat that AI would be replacing us anytime soon. I think AI is a tool that helps us tackle complexity. It can help us as a communication partner to create compelling visualizations and narratives, helps deepen research and analysis, and helps to empower holistic design focus for strategic thinking and creative solutions. Also, this is, a bit of a business cliche, I would say, but I think that AI has some real opportunities to really help us work smarter and not harder. It can help to reduce some of the increasing administrative burden that we're seeing in practice, automating routine tasks, streamlining standards applications, supporting permit submissions and approvals, and potential quality control. I don't think that a lot of the AIs are quite there yet, but that's something that they could serve a role in the future. And also endless inspiration. AI is a creative co-pilot. I think one of the interesting aspects of AI is that it never gets annoyed with you. You can ask it endless questions and it will always give you a response. And so really looking at using AI in an iterative design process. So generating initial, we might generate the initial idea and then get a range of options of how that might be implemented, discard the weak ideas, kind of identify the good ones, carry those forward, and really using AI as more of a partner and creating this iterative design loop. And then next, I'd just like to look at some of the speculative futures, where we might be headed. This is really just my opinion based on my experience over the last couple of years. It's unpredictable where we might be going in the future, but these are some trends that I've observed that I think we could anticipate moving forward. I think one of the interesting ones is that as the world becomes increasingly digitized and virtualized, I think it makes real world experiences gain more value. And this is like a core strength of landscape architecture and something that I think we really need to lean into as a profession. One of the challenges about implementing AI at an organization level is that right now it really benefits the individuals more than the organization. There's a lot of challenges implementing AI workflows because they don't necessarily map easily onto traditional tasks and workflows that we might have in our practices. This isn't something that's just unique to landscape architecture. This is something that's been observed in all businesses trying to implement AI. There is actually a recent study from MIT where they surveyed a number of businesses and they weren't seeing the return on investment in using AI in their organizations. And I think this really kind of is the key point where individuals that know how to use it and can kind of amplify their skills, but it is harder at that organization level. Also, there's a need for continuous learning in the age of AI. As I mentioned earlier, there's always this new relentless pace of new models being released. The other thing that I'm finding is that as a new model is released, you almost have to learn how to talk to it again. Like the way you prompt one model can be quite different to get similar results in another model. And so that just requires a lot of experimentation and testing. The other thing is that when these models are released, a lot of the companies that release it don't even know the full capabilities of the models when they're releasing them. And so they don't come with instruction manuals, and you have to figure out how it can work for your organization and your application. So really embracing that notion of experimentation and lifelong learning is something that I think we really need to be, everyone I think needs to be looking at moving into the future. And just to kind of build on this point too, that the AI that you're using today is the worst it will ever be. And so the models are quite capable now, and I don't think we've learned everything that they can currently do, but there's at the same time always new models coming out that we're having to understand. Also pay for and use the best models. The free version of AI models typically don't really give you that satisfactory results. Usually the paid models are quite a step up in capability. And so if you're trying it out, like a lot of people will try it out using the free models find that the results they're getting aren't that interesting and then say, oh, it's not for me, it's not that useful. I would recommend trying the paid versions and seeing what the capabilities of those are. Also, if a model can't do something now, check back in a few months. And given their rapid pace of evolution, is that it might be able to do something that a few months ago it couldn't do. Also, while this might sound a bit strange, I think it's useful to think about treating AI like a person almost. Your quality of output is directly related to the quality of your input. And while there are technical aspects to AI, it's generally user friendly, but you do have to learn how to talk to it. And so communication is really important. Give it a clear persona, give it clear context. The context is really important, and be really detailed in your requests. And don't just command it, but think about collaborating with it. So I have a couple diagrams here just showing how AI might fit into practices and how we might want to think about that. Historically, landscape architecture practice resided more in the bottom left-hand corner where it's manual and analog with hand drawing, sketching, physical model making, hands-on creation. The digital revolution has pushed us more into the standard digital practice category. So it's more digital and manual with tools like CAD, GIS, Adobe Suite. But AI is starting to open up new possibilities and looking at both automated, both in the digital realm and the analog realm. So looking at automated and analog might include things like 3D printing, some of the robotics that are starting to come out. And then the automated digital is looking at things like parametric design, generative AI, scripting, complex simulations, and data analysis. And, different practices are going to fit differently onto this spectrum. And I doubt that any one practice would fit squarely within any one of these necessarily as we move forward. But certain practices might lean more towards the automation side of things, and other ones might lean towards the manual. There's also been a number of interesting surveys that have started to come out trying to understand the use of AI in professions. The AIA recently had an interesting survey, which I thought was quite comprehensive and one of the better ones that I've seen. It was released in January of this year, and the respondents to that, a little over half have experimented with AI, with 6% that use it regularly. So we can see it's still fairly early in its adoption within architecture, which is a related profession to ours. Also, age plays a significant role with people under 50 much more open to adopting it, with under 35 being the most open to adopting and exploring the use of AI. Some of the optimism that people are saying about AI is like efficiency and time savings, inspiration, opportunities, productivity and cost reduction. Also, firm leaders seem to be more optimistic than at the staff level. There's some of this skepticism and concerns. About 90% did express some skepticism about AI, even those that are adopting it. The accuracy and authenticity is a concern, and also unintended consequences of AI. And so as we start to kind of like look at how AI might fit into a practice in a little bit finer grain, starting to look at tasks that might be more suitable to AI and other ones that we don't want AI to touch at all. And so this is actually a framework that I borrowed from a study that was recently done from Stanford University, looking at what workers really want in AI, and they came up with this framework based on these axes with a strong desire for automation and low desire for automation, easy to automate and difficult to automate. And so different tasks would sit in these different zones. And so in the strong desire for automation, the top end of that chart, we have these two aspects, the tasks with a higher desire for automation but low capability, and then tasks with a higher desire and higher capability. And so some of those ones in the opportunity zone are spatial synthesis, design mentor, so optimizing spatial layouts based on defined goals, such as like maximizing solar access, minimizing cut and fill, optimizing pedestrian circulation, and narrative synthesis, so rapid project story drafts that stitch together research and precedent into public-friendly arc. The automation zone, the green light zone, so looking at things like proposals and RFPs, so using AI to help to, craft team bios, past project inserts, also providing like editing and copywriting advice based on first drafts. Public boards and stakeholder visuals, so creating mood boards, quick variants, and help to communicate the vibe of the project, bylaw, code, and policy scans. Oftentimes at a project, you have like a lot of documents, related documents, and so you can use AI to help to synthesize some of those. Also, very preliminary, like drawing quality assurance pre-check, so checklisting things like missing north arrows, sheet references, scale mismatches, that kind of thing. And these are this is not a representative or complete list by any means, but just an example of what tasks might fit into some of these zones based on my estimation. Low desire for automation, so low priority zone is like low desire and low capability. So things like bespoke detailing, internal management, and interest holder negotiations. And then automation red light zone. So design judgment, so setting design intent, selecting concepts, resolving trade-offs that shape public experience. Final professional judgment, sealing drawings, signing letters, accepting liability, on-site field decisions and safety calls. These are things I think we want to keep human and not delegate to an AI. And then just to wrap up, I just wanted to talk about the human element in AI integration. And as I mentioned before, it's not necessarily a question of human versus the machine, but it's like, how can we work with AI to preserve human qualities in our work? And
it's so
here, I have this, I found this interesting talk from Bjork, which was in the early 1990s at the emergence of electronic music. And there was a lot of criticism about electronic music, how it didn't have any soul, and, replacing humans playing instruments. And I thought she just had an interesting perspective on this.
And it's so amazing when people tell me that electronic music has not got soul, and they blame the computers. They got the finger and point at the computer. It's like, there's no soul here. It's like, you can't blame the computer. If there's not soul in the music, it's because nobody put it there. And it's not the tool's fault.
And yeah, so some of these like deeply human qualities that I think we really need to think about cultivating, and these are also qualities that are hard for AI to replicate, are things like intuition, like gut feeling, pattern recognition beyond data that you have, insight, deep understanding, seeing the why behind the what, imagination, envisioning possibilities and lateral thinking, invention, creating something truly new and original, and recognizing value, arranging things with care. And I think this idea of curation is going to be a really, really valuable skill in the age of AI when we have so much content that gets generated. It's really picking out what is the things that have meaning and are will become really valuable. So I'll just end on that we need to approach AI neither with fear nor blind enthusiasm, but with curiosity, ethics, and a focus on what makes our profession distinct. Real landscapes matter more than ever. And yeah, we'll just open it up to questions. I've also prepared a resource document that if you use your camera here to follow the link, some prompting guides in there, also some YouTube channels that you can go to check out. I think that's one of the best ways to learn about AI is some of the online resources such as YouTube. And yeah, some other opinion pieces that you can check out as well. And as well as Hope had mentioned earlier, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I post fairly frequently on LinkedIn about AI, climate change, and landscape architecture. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was great. I've watched your progression online, and so the quality of the images just it really is very impressive to see what you've been able to learn and to use this new tool. I'm going to start with one of my own questions, if that's okay.
Yep.
I mainly use AI in a text form, so like ChatGPT, and I'm just wondering if you can speak to using, text generating tools and how it may have changed processes in your firm relating to submitting proposals, because that's where I've seen some changes, and just whether or not like those administrative text parts of your output have been influenced or whatnot.
Yeah, I think we definitely do use it for proposals. Like so in our practice, like we have like a long history of proposals going back, 20 years now. So we have a lot of information to pull on. And I think AI is like really useful if you provide it with context, right? So if you're just trying to write something without any context, I don't think that the information you're going to get is very specific to your application or what you need to use it for. But if you're giving it high quality information from like past projects, your bios, your company descriptions, that kind of thing. What I think where I found AI really helpful is to really helping tailor our responses more specifically to what the proposal is asking for. So, providing the RFP together with our information, and when you're writing the bio, it's more tailored to that specific proposal response rather than just being like a boilerplate scenario. And so, I think you have to think about it as well as like it's not just like a one-shot thing where you just like write your proposal based on one prompt. Like you have to chunk the information up into smaller components, and then you can use it for pieces here and there, but not just for like the whole proposal. So it's really much like like one thing you hear if you start to get into AI at all is like the human in the loop, and so you need to have that that kind of person there, and it's really that iterative process that I had kind of outlined in one of the earlier slides.
Thanks for that. I think that context piece is so important to avoid. If you assume every other firm is using AI for their proposals too, if you don't provide your unique context to it, to the materials, they all end up looking the same. And certainly I review resumes in another part of my life, and so all kids' teenage resumes look alike these days, and I'm assuming that's why. But okay, let's go to the questions that are coming in. Colin was asking, have you developed an AI use policy for your firm or an AI accreditation policy or approach?
No, like we're not a huge firm either. So we don't have like any kind of AI accreditation. I haven't really seen anything like that that's available. But as far as like policy, like I think like fundamentally, what I tell everybody in the office is that, you need to be responsible for whatever material you're putting forward, right? So the if you use AI, for components of it, like you need to be checking that and making sure that that's material that we want to be sending out and putting forward. So like it can never be the AI's fault that there was a mistake in something, right? So I think like fundamentally that is one of the driving principles that we try to follow in our office. There are, you do hear concerns about privacy and data. When you pay for your models, that model stays within your organization and isn't shared with the with the other companies, so it's not like trained on anything. And so but if you're using the free models, they can take that data and they can use that data to train on future models, right? So I think like that's a key component, that you do need to be paying for these, especially if you're using them in a professional context, and checking out the policies of the providers on what their policies are regarding that.
Great points there. Okay, so this question is from Michael. One of the main drawbacks I find in interacting with AI, and specifically ChatGPT, is its tendency to reinforce a confirmation bias with the research and iterations. It tends to feed you the information you want to hear versus critically challenging your idea inputs, even when providing detailed prompts and roles. Do you have any similar experience with AI? And by the way, thank you for a great presentation and sharing your experiences.
Yeah, I think like the default the default response of a lot of these models is to be very supportive and enthusiastic and kind of pump you up a little bit, I guess. And you can get around that with prompting, like like, so that's where like learning how to prompt and how to talk to it can I think help get past some of those things. And like there are a number of like good prompting guides out there, and I just encourage to kind of like start to kind of dig into that a little bit deeper, because if you're just having like a 1 or 2 sentence prompt without providing any context either, yeah, it's generally very supportive of your what you're trying to do. And so yeah, I think professionally you want to get deeper than that. Like you don't want to just get someone telling you that you're great all the time.
Thanks for that. Have you found any AI platforms that help with AI prompt writing for image generation?
Yeah, you can use like any of the like Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, any of those. They all can help with that. Like you can yeah, basically any chatbot will help you with that for sure. And I guess I would just add one thing with, so one thing with image generation is that words, like archetypal words that have like a lot of meaning within them, are really useful in AI image generation. So like a certain word can like really express like the lighting quality of a scene, and you can just express it in one word. And so like digging into like historical references like Renaissance art and different things like that, like and pulling out key terminology in that represent different qualities, can be really useful in writing prompts for image generation.
As a client choosing firm X over firm Y, what is your take on the idea that making use of AI also trains AI, and that a tendency to flatten the diversity of responses over time might become a significant risk?
So, well, so when you're using AI, you're not training it at that point. So there's a thing that's called a context window. So every chat you do, there's a certain amount of memory that can be held within that chat. And as soon as you close it, you start a new one. Like none of that memory, like that, you're not training the model as you're talking to it. So that's just one thing that people should understand. And if you're not using a free model, that what your content of your conversation isn't shared with the company to train their models either. So that's one consideration. I also think that while I think there is potential for there to be some sameness from AI, I think there's also the potential that AI gives us the ability to have much more diversity, right? And really kind of like lean into the individual personalities of different organizations or different projects or different, that it doesn't have to be all the same. Now, I think there are things in life like that, tend to, that's why standards are developed and they help to kind of keep this sameness. But I think as landscape architects, we often find ourselves pushing against those. And, AI might help to reveal some opportunities within existing standards where you can kind of create unique things that maybe you didn't see otherwise too, right? So I think it goes to intentionality as well behind how you use these. Like if you have the intention of trying to do something different and unique, it helps you do that. If you want to follow a standard, it will help you do that too. So I think the intentionality behind the user is critical.
Thanks. You've touched on this next question a little bit, but AI is very efficient and fast, but where does it stand in protecting the privacy of information and the copyright of a design? So you talked a little bit about privacy, paid versus non-paid, but what about the copyright issue?
So yeah, the copyright issue is, I think something that is, there's a lot of uncertainty around this right now. I think our current laws aren't really written to handle the idea of something like AI. So there are a number of court cases out there right now that are going over that. I think the way that I look at it is that it goes once again to taking responsibility for what you're producing. And you can use AI to copy something else. You can use Photoshop to copy something. Like there's ways of copying things without AI, but AI does enable you to do that. But I think you just need to be responsible for the output that you're doing. Because like you can, and I think also when you look at anything like, you look like an architecture like modernism, right? Like everything was influenced by the projects that happened before. And like, a new project that's a modernist project isn't totally original, right? Like it's built on a foundation of projects and that have come before it. And, so that's how people work and that's how the creative process works. It's like taking two different things and combining them together and building on things that have happened before. And so so like that is generally how AI works. Like it learns from things and recognizes patterns. You can use it to help to copy, but you don't have to either. And so that's where I think the personal responsibility comes into play.
What are your thoughts on the risks to the artist, the creative, the craftsman, and having an emotional connection and heart? And you touched on that with the video that you showed, but how does one protect that with AI? How to continue to defend intuition, creativity, etc. if AI content becomes more available? For instance, how to conceive or convince a client that design and intuition offer something that they can't self-generate with AI on their own?
Well, I think that is going to be a challenge. Like I think there is going to always be a place for like handcrafted analog work, right? Like, when the camera came out, people were worried that there's going to be no use for painting anymore, right? Like people still paint portraits, right? So it's a more of a niche thing. Like it's not maybe as popular as it once was. And that may be the case for some other things. But I think people that do analog things well are going to have a lot of value to them. But I think there is also going to be, I think one of the dangers with AI and challenges that I think we're going to have to figure out how as a society we deal with this is that there's going to be a lot of like AI can do certain things good enough and is good enough? Like, are people going to accept good enough for a lot of situations? And that's, I think, a real challenge. And I think, there's going to, like, what's good enough landscape architecture that AI could do versus, a really thoughtful kind of response that, I do think there's always going to be a place for that kind of more considered type of an approach. There is going to be this aspect, and I think the good enough aspect is where other professions might look to include that as part of their scope of work as well. And so that is somewhere I think we need to be paying attention for sure as a profession.
Lots of questions still coming in. We've
Yep.
got a few more minutes here. In your view, how can AI effectively support interdisciplinary collaboration in landscape architecture and related fields?
So one thing that I use it for is so we have to have teams with quite large consulting teams on some of our projects. And, sometimes we, especially on projects like climate adaptation and that, we're starting to work with consultants that we might not have in the past. And so we don't necessarily understand their scope. And so you can use AI to ask questions and get a better understanding of what they do. So you're able to communicate with them when you're engaging with them. And also sometimes, their reports might, be something we're not used to seeing either. And you can use AI to help to translate that for you and help to, simplify something that might seem overly complex, right? And so I think just as a minimum kind of level, like that is something that I currently find can be quite useful.
Great. Quick question. What are the cost ranges for the subscriptions of the AI platforms you talked about?
Yeah, so they're generally pretty affordable. Like they're all in American dollars. So, but ChatGPT is $20 a month. We have access to a number of these different applications, and we have a subscription to an aggregator that you can get access. So sometimes they operate on credits. So you might have a pool of credits of $20 a month for, let's say, 1,000 credits. And then if you need to top up with more credits, you can just buy those separately. There's that kind of approach. There's just a subscription, like ChatGPT is $20 a month. We also use Gemini, we use Google Workspace, so it's part of our Google Workspace. So it's a little bit more expensive than it used to be, but it's not terrible. So I find they're generally pretty affordable. And yeah. They do add up though if you have multiple subscriptions for different services, for sure.
And I have learned you have to remember to cancel your subscriptions when you stop using them.
Yeah. That's also where some of the aggregators are quite useful, because you have access to many different models in one program.
So this one's looking for another session. Could we have another session for you to show us how you practice AI tools to generate such works? And we don't have another session planned, but perhaps you could suggest some of the YouTube videos or what you had in the links that you shared.
Yeah. I would definitely check out some of the links that I provided. There's some tutorials in there. The best way is to look on YouTube, or also Twitter or X has some good resources there. I know there's you have to pick specific people and just follow them and don't look at the For You tab. But I find that yeah, anytime you do a tutorial, it's going to be out of date in a month or two anyway. And so they have a very limited lifespan, the tutorials. That's why kind of following people that are good at doing those tutorials in different aspects. I really that's how I've learned everything.
And I have learned that Jeff will share the really good ones on LinkedIn. So if you follow him, that's your first step to finding the good ones.
Yeah.
So thanks for the great presentation. I've been experimenting with tools like Fenestra and Rendero, great for open-ended brainstorming, but I've struggled to get results that match specific design intent. Have you had similar experiences or any tips on using AI more effectively when aiming for a clear, realistic outcome?
Yeah, I think that is one of the challenges with AI, right? Like Midjourney, for instance, if you want something really specific, you're going to be hard. Like you're not going to, you can get something that has a vibe of something, but you're not going to be able to get a very specific thing for its place. There are some tools that are coming out now with image editors. Like there's a new Google image model called Nano Banana, and you can use that to edit images with AI, and so you can put things into a scene. So the capabilities are increasing, but yeah, it can be difficult to get the specificity of what you want sometimes. But at the same time, I think that that's just a matter of time until that gets better.
Great, thanks. I've heard that Midjourney is one of the best tools for making very specific selections within an image or design, allowing edits and regenerations without affecting the rest of the image. Are there other AI platforms with this capability? And I see this as one of the main advantages that it gives a Midjourney a competitive edge, even compared to the powerful tools like ChatGPT and Gemini. Building off of what you had just said.
Yeah, like I think like Midjourney, like stylistically, I think is by far the best. Like it just has like certain qualities about it that the other ones can't match. But I think different tools have different different uses, right? Like, so for instance, you could create an image in Midjourney and then bring it into this new Nano Banana model and make edits to it. Right? So you could get some of that specificity that you might not be able to get in the other ones. Like on the first image that I had in the slide with what I did there was I generated an image in Midjourney, and then the title for the presentation, I generated a graphic for that separately, and I had the Nano Banana apply the graphic for the image to the wall of the building. So you can do things like that. But yeah, and there's new models that are coming out too that and like they're starting to become available in Photoshop as well. And so being able to use layers and kind of some of the traditional Photoshop techniques in combination with AI helps to give you some more control and capabilities.
So we're right down to the hour. I'm going to ask one quick question left. And is it true that you get better results when you use English instead of French?
I haven't tried it with French, so I don't know. I would doubt it, but I don't know. I can't answer. I don't have the experience to answer that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Before everybody logs off, I just wanted to take a moment again to thank Jeff so much for sharing. I do think that there is another session someday in the future where we'll have to have a follow-up, and just because things changing in this space so much. But I also wanted to encourage you all to fill in the survey that's been circulated recently by the CSLA, ASLA, and IFLA. It's a team of researchers. So Jeff spoke of the AIA's survey that they did earlier this year, but this is the landscape architecture related one. So fill it in. ASLA will be promoting it next week at their Congress. So we want to make sure we get lots of Canadian responses in there as well. And it is a technical kind of survey from an academic perspective, but I think it will give us a really good perspective on who's using it and how they're using it in the design process, and what different tools are being used. And we will certainly plan to share the results of that survey once it becomes available to us. And then I also wanted to let you know about the upcoming webinars that we have. Thanks there, Rebecca. We have two next week. Our Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee has planned a webinar with Darcy Young, dealing with microaggressions in the workplace. So you can register for that online, and Rebecca's just put the links into the chat for us. And then next month on October 30th, Colin and Shayna will be launching our second round of our Land Adapt webinar series, and we'll be building off of the discussions we started back in January and February on embodied carbon and carbon accounting, and they will be presenting on the landscape carbon benchmarking study that the City of Toronto just completed. So looking forward to both of those webinars, and I hope you all can join us. And thanks again, Jeff. This has been really, really informative, and we'll make sure that the links that you sent on the QR gets added to your webinar page so that people can get your links as well.
Great.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.